of my friends. Literally everybody I had met in my years in the United States was suddenly no longer safe or supportive. That was tough, starting over alone. And my goal of being ordained was suddenly no longer realistic. Was that religion? Exiling a person from their friends and community because they do not fit the ideal of what was supposed to be normal and acceptable? That didn't make any sense to me. It did not stop my life, though. I continued my studies and received a graduate counseling degree. And for many years, I worked in the field of counseling, and I received plenty of counseling myself to heal from the past hurts I had had and the disappointments, and to make peace with who I am. It did not solve my spiritual search, though, and I still did not have an answer to my question about religion and how it was supposed to fit into my life. I'm grateful for the many years of healing and for the counseling career I ended up in. I moved to Tucson, and there I found a liberal church. St. Francis in the Foothills is a Methodist church there that very much embraces wvuu theology, embracing and welcoming people of all faiths and all lifestyles and orientations. And then came a surprise. Just as I had resigned myself to not working as a minister, a job opening came up in that church, Minister of Children, Youth, and Families. I applied and I got the job. Here I was finally doing ministry. I enjoyed the religious education and the family work I got to do, as well as the sermons I got to give once in a while. I was newly hopeful and inspired. I checked with the Methodist powers that be and completed all of their requirements for ordination. I took a bunch of additional graduate courses from 3 different seminaries, and in 1990 I was ready. That was pretty amazing, except, well, I had just started a new relationship. And they now informed me that since I was a practicing homosexual, and their book of discipline states that practice of homosexuality is contrary to Christian teaching, they would not ordain me. Ouch. The fact that St. Francis Church accepted gays did not matter. It was a denominational decision. I grieved. I got more counseling. I switched back to counseling jobs, well, mostly. I rebelled and did get a mail order ordination so I could perform weddings and memorial services, and I limited myself to part-time and lay ministry. I had started a counseling practice and made a point of having it be a ministry. I saw everybody on a sliding scale, basically letting everybody choose the rate they could pay based on their income and budget. I still let all my clients in their practice choose their own rates. I chose to live a life of service, adopting difficult to place and raise children, volunteering in the local jail, serving my counseling clients, and getting involved in lay ministry. Once I found a wvuu church 15 years ago, I slowly became involved, and before I knew what was happening, suddenly I was leading the pastoral care team and was chairing the Worship Associates Committee. Over time, I gave quite a few sermons there, and more congregation members began to see me as a minister. I hesitated, but finally I took the risk to ask about ministry again. It wasn't so much a choice, but an inner drive I could no longer ignore. Like the French novelist Honoré de Balzac wrote, vocations which we wanted to pursue but didn't bleed like colors on the whole of our existence. Whatever this thing called religion was, it was not going to let me go. Being denied my calling to ministry had been a deep pain since I first completed my minister degree in 1980. I gathered my courage and contacted the Unitarian Universalist Association 6 years ago, and lo and behold, I received credits for my past studies from 5 different seminaries and a couple of waivers based on my training and experience. The Board of Trustees, as my local wvuu congregation, sponsored me, and then I took some amazing courses both at Starr King Seminary and Meadville Lombard in Chicago. I completed an internship at the UU Church of Tucson and ended up being able to serve as their sabbatical minister for 3 months while their minister was absent. All the while, I continued to fall more and more in love with ministry. And then our district executive, Ken Brown, asked me to consider becoming the consulting ministry of what was at the time called the Unitarian Universalist Church of Southeastern Arizona, which soon became Sky Island UU in Sierra Vista. Instead of the stop-and-go process I had grown used to, 1 step forward, 2 steps back usually, the process was speeding up beyond my wildest imagination. I was ordained in 2013, and I've now completed 2 years serving at Sky Island UU. Now, what questions do I ask? Looking back over this roller coaster of a ministerial formation, was it fair? All those delays, rejections, and setbacks. Was it right? Was this an indication that religion was all messed up and not worth pursuing? Whose fault was it that it took 33 years after receiving my first ministry degree before I was finally ordained? What could or should I have done? Should I have lied to the Methodists about my girlfriend at that time? Should I have just kept my mouth shut? That's not one of my strengths, I'm afraid. What questions do I ask as I seek to process this strange life of mine, with all its hurdles and setbacks? Questions are powerful because they determine the directions of our thoughts. Counselors spend years actually learning to not ask questions in their counseling, because asking questions often directs the client to go in a direction they may not have needed or wanted to go. Just being present, actively listening, allows them to maybe get to a place I never even dreamed they had to go to. Listening matters more than questioning. Answering questions often distracts from the pursuit of truth. So what questions do I ask of religion? And will it answer me? When I look at the example of Jesus as described in the Christian Gospels, I find a man who had a very odd relationship to questions and to religion. Jesus was asked 183 direct questions in the 4 Gospels, if you add them up. He only answered 3 of those. The others he either ignored, kept silent about, asked a question in return, changed its subject, told a story or gave an audiovisual demonstration to make his point, or told them it was the wrong question, revealed the insincerity and hypocrisy of their question, or redirected them elsewhere. Check it out yourself if you like. He himself is said to have asked 307 questions. When he saw a woman who was going to be stoned to death for adultery, he asked those around, "Who among you is without sin?" Good question, right? That stopped him. When asked why his disciples dare to pick and eat grains on a Sabbath as they walked by a field, he asked in response, "Have you not read what David did when he was in need and hungry? Was man made for the Sabbath, or was the Sabbath made for men?" Again and again, Jesus shifted the focus from a question that is divisive to one that unites. It's never a simple yes or no, right or wrong, sinner or saved answer with Jesus. It is so easy to miss this point when we are searching for the right answer. Jesus was not about giving answers and was amazingly good at avoiding straight answers. Instead, he was able to stir the mind and guide his followers as well as his foes in a very different way of thinking. And here we are in an era where many questions are asked and even more are answered in the name of Jesus. And most questions are ridiculous. Let me share an example. A while back, I was spending time with my wife Melva, and I apologized. I simply said, "Sorry, I was nagging and impatient earlier." She responded, "You're entitled. I'm usually way more bitchy than you." A question we had not discussed in our almost 24 years together. Which one of us is more bitchy? I stopped the conversation right there, laughing. That is not a helpful question. No answer would provide the win-win we are looking for as a couple. It's like asking, which one of your kids do you like best? Or would you rather die in a hurricane or a car crash? Or would you rather be betrayed by a friend or assaulted by a stranger? Or who has a more meaningful life? The one who finds comfort in their faith or the one who feels calm relying on reason alone? Would you rather lose your limbs or your eyesight? These are bad questions, all of them. Have you ever noticed that we tend to engage in useless, even destructive questions all too often? Like when the recent burnings of black church were the recent burnings of black churches accidental? Or were they all vicious attacks based on racism? Rather than how can we help them rebuild their churches and make life more fair and just? Or whose fault was the economic crisis? Or if we dare to look at the abortion issue, when does life begin? Is 20 weeks too late to terminate a pregnancy? Are our taxes used well in supporting abortions, which they're not anyway? Imagine bringing these up in a diverse group of people. What would happen? Yes, all hell would break loose. All of these questions are divisive and not helpful. And if we look at religious debates, we find even more bad questions. Is my God the one and only true God, or yours? Is my faith the one and only true faith, or yours? How dare you doubt the Bible? Do you think you know more than God? Either theism or humanism, which one do we value as UUs? Is religion opium for the people, or our only hope for the future? These questions lead to arrogant and divisive arguments. Useless, bad questions. Just like scolding a misbehaving dog. No, that one is just fine, but I just want to shout, bad question, drop it. In the same way, it does not do me any good to ask why it took me decades to be finally affirmed and ordained as a minister. That question does not feel good, and none of the answers bring comfort and healing. So I choose to drop it. Bad question, drop it. Why questions are also usually destructive. Have you ever noticed what why questions do? Why do we always go to your favorite restaurant and not mine? Why do you have to leave your dirty socks all over the floor? Why can't you ever remember our anniversary? See what I mean? None of these are really wanting a reason. They're just another way of saying, I'm angry that we don't go to my favorite restaurant more often, and pick your darn socks up off the floor, and you better remember our anniversary next year. But being that blunt and direct is frowned upon in our culture, so we hide it and cover it in supposed why questions. Not helpful. So, what are helpful ones that can assist us personally and in our struggle with religion and searching for the meaning of our existence? Good questions are ones that can be answered by our wvuu principles. Good questions unite and empower rather than divide and diminish. For instance, as far as abortion goes, let's not ask what is right, but ask who should make the decision. The first principle comes to our aid, reminding us of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and suddenly respecting a woman's right to self-determination about her body is no longer a divisive proposition. Or regarding religion, who has the right to choose their own God and their own faith, or their own rejection of faith? The third and fourth principles help us here. We covenant to acceptance of one another and the encouragement to spiritual growth and a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So who has a right to choose their belief or disbelief in God and their own faith? You do, and you also, and you. And even those who believe the opposite of what I believe and may even judge me harshly, they too have a right to their faith and their religion. And while we are a justice-seeking people, it is important to remember that even questions about right or wrong, fair, unfair, just or unjust, will often divide us and not unite us. As soon as I fall into the trap to answer these, I have just separated myself from people who gave the opposite answer. I've stepped away from unity and I'm moving towards division. Here are some questions that work for me. Is this an issue that stirs my empathy and compassion? If so, am I willing to do something about it? Can I do something about it? And what is the first step? And am I willing to speak up and ask people to join me to do something about whatever injustice I am bothered by? How about starting now? Those are good questions for me. They're powerful questions for us individually, as a congregation, a church, and dare I say, as a Unitarian Universalist religion. Personally, I need to set aside questions of fairness and justice as far as my past is concerned. They distract me and use up my energy with negativity. Instead, I want to ask useful and productive questions. Do I still feel called to ministry? Well, yes. Are there people who want me to serve as a minister? Certainly. Now that feels good. Do I know when I will serve another congregation as their contract or called minister? Well, no, so that's not a helpful question. It can be set aside. The only thing before me each day and each moment is the question, what is the next right thing to do? Most of the time for me it'll be service to others, celebrating life, and remembering self-care. Those are helpful answers. This question about the next right thing empowers me. I like that. What are the questions that you have been mulling over in your head? Or once you have debated with friends, family members, exes, or co-workers? Are they divisive questions or empowering ones? And if divisive, are you willing to change them from divisive questions to unifying and empowering ones? Simply put, most constructive questions start with, what is helpful? What can I do? Sometimes none of the questions that pop into my mind are helpful. Then it's time to remember, bad question, drop it, and wait until a useful question emerges and guides me to some wisdom. My wish for us today is that we find wise questions and that we tolerate unanswered and unanswerable questions, and that we may walk away from divisive, useless ones and instead tackle those questions which serve our well-being, our search for truth and meaning, our congregation, and our community. Amen. So be it. Blessed be. Please join me in singing our next hymn, 347. Please rise as you're willing and able. And together, let us read West Valley's mission statement. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches.
Reverend Tata, thank you. Haida, thank you. That was really good. Can we give her a hand, please? Yeah. You tell him. And also, I would like to say thank you to our greeters and to our musician, and to Diana and Kim for helping out with the snacks afterwards, and to everyone else, because this is a community and everyone participates. I'm going to read some short closing words, which will be followed by a benediction by Reverend Haida and the postlude. Belief comes of itself. Disbelief, distrust, suspicion is learned. The fountain of belief is itself deep in the soul, and somehow or other it will well up from the depths. Do what we may to help or hinder.
And let's also thank Tom. And I hear Roz was very instrumental in getting that order of service together. I'm grateful for them. I am grateful for all of you. So this week as we go forth, let's do what we just sang about. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. May this be a week filled with hope and inspiration, in which we dare to ask questions that empower us and those around us. Go in peace with love always as your guide.